Okay, welcome everyone to the July 31st Dev Meeting 2024 for Flux. Um, oh, let's
Okay.
start the meeting.
Okay. Yeah, so we are approaching the next Kubernetes release. There was the first release candidate is up today. I prepared the kind image for it, and I'm going to run all the Flux end-to-end tests, see what issues arise with upgrading all the Flux packages. The release candidate, but given that is a release candidate, we know for sure what will happen in 2 weeks from now at release time and how it impacts Flux. So we are basically approaching the next Flux miner. We should follow the Kubernetes miner roughly 2 weeks after. So end of August, we should be preparing to do a release. In the roadmap, we have lots of things in there that we didn't got to do. So yeah, we should discuss what to remove or move to the next milestone and what can go in SD. So we have, besides the image automation promotion, which we discussed it a little bit last time, and we kind of concluded that this can be moved to the next milestone. We have the promotion of the bucket API to version 1, GA. And for that, we need custom CSS and HTTPS port, which I'm guessing we have finalized them. Yes, so those are merged, right? It's only the STS endpoint is the one that I'll be adding to the roadmap.
Yeah, there's just, yeah, for buckets. So there's just one thing that Sunny wanted to discuss again last meeting, which is right now we put some guardrails in the code for the proxy to only be supported inside the generic um, provider. But actually, in the switch case, it's also like if you use the AWS provider, it would be through the code path as well. And Sunny was suggesting to remove and put it more up in the code before the switch case, such that we can enable the proxy for all the providers. Because in my tests, when I tested the proxy for GCP, it seemed to be a bug in the Google library. I was able to pull a bucket that was public using the proxy, but when I restricted the access to the bucket such that it would need some kind of authentication, then the proxy stopped working. And even the simplest form of authentication, which is just using JSON service account key, right? Not OIDC, that didn't work as well. So I would just I repeated this test many times, without proxy, with JSON service account key, it worked. And then when I enabled proxy again, it stopped working. So my impression is that somehow the library was not sending the credentials over the TLS connection passing through the proxy, right? So I think this is probably a problem in the Google library. And Sunny suggested that since this is the case, it makes sense for us to actually enable this code path for all the providers, like enabling the proxy. And When Google fixes this, we just bump the version and it will start working with Flux as well. And it kind of makes sense to me. Like for TLS is a different story, right? But for proxy, it kind of makes sense.
Did you updated the Google packages when you did the
Uh,
tests?
no.
I'm guessing they are 6 months old at least.
Yeah, I could try that.
Okay, so when you move do we have an issue for this?
Oh, no. We don't have an issue for this.
Okay, so let's create an issue. Sunny, can you create an issue for this?
So last week we were entertaining this idea. Should we add proxy for every connection that goes out of the controller? It feels like yes, we should. I think Lee was here last week, and he said most of the enterprise customers they would need such a support. Like every connection going out of their cluster should go to a specific proxy, whether they are within a cloud or on-prem. So it felt like we should have proxy for every possible connections we make. So whether it's AWS, Azure, Google, everything, we should support proxy for every connection. And we were also discussing about in OCI repositories case where for verification of the artifact, the connection goes out to the Recur server for cosign verification. And even in case of what's the other one? Notation, the notation code goes out to the registry to get the digest to do the verification. Those connections are not currently going to proxy. We should have proxy support for all of these connections. And after the meeting, I was thinking more, and I realized that the image repository should also have proxy support that's similar to a C repository. And I wanted to discuss that today. So image repository will also have spec change where we'll introduce a proxy secret ref, and connections going to the registry should go to the proxy. And when we add the digest spinning support in image policy, where image policy will directly connect to the registry to get the digest, that'll refer to the image repositories proxy configuration to get the proxy configuration and connect to proxy itself. I think that covers all the proxy support.
Yeah, for image automation, it's simpler because we don't have verification there. So
And
it's no
image
recur.
automation takes the Git repository configuration, right? So it will go through proxy if Git repository is configured.
No. Okay, image reflector. So when image reflector controller goes to the registry, it does not have cosign or anything like that in there, right? So it's a single call to the list tags that goes to the registry. So it's straightforward how to add the proxy there. For cosign, there are two things. You can have it doesn't always result in a call to record.
Key-based
only
doesn't. Keyless will.
Yes, depends. It depends. Also, when you have a key, depends on how you sign it. So it depends on how you sign it, basically. Because even if you sign it with a private key and not OEDC, you can opt to record the signature timestamp in record, right? So even with a private key, it can still make calls, an HTTPS call to record.
Looking at the code,
Uh,
I think there is a separation. Only when you go for keyless, then we initialize a separate client that connects to recur. But if you use key, I could not see any code where we are connecting to a separate server.
in our code, yes, but if you look in the cosine CLI, you'll see,
They
right?
have it.
So yeah, and that's, I think it was added way after we did the implementation. The idea is that, okay,
It's like a new feature.
yeah, I don't know, but it's some time ago. The idea is that you record only the timestamp, right? Not the provider that signs it, and then you verify. When you verify with the private key, and then you also verify the timestamp, right? And we don't have that in Flux. Anyway, it's unrelated to the bucket proxy, right? This is what we should be solving for the roadmap. So for the bucket, let's have a issue that we want to go through the proxy for every provider, not only generic. In the pull request, we should update all packages, including the GCP SDK. Test it out. If it doesn't work, we actually need to write in the docs, hey, this proxy applies to everything, but it doesn't work for Google, right? We need to tell people. We can't say, oh yeah, we have proxy support. We know it doesn't work, and then we'll have users opening issues. Hey, it doesn't work, right? So if we with the latest Google SDK, if it still doesn't work, we should say that in the docs.
And we should probably also, like the same test I did for Google, I should do for Microsoft and Amazon as well, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
So I'm going to add to the roadmap the STS endpoint support.
Did you check? Did you check our findings in the STS pull request?
Yes, I read over that.
So
I
I
don't
was
think we
thinking,
need a secret ref there. That's my opinion.
how do you provide configuration when it's Minio STS?
Why do you need a secret?
STS, you have to identify yourself to get a short-lived token. In case of AWS, you're within a secure environment, you don't need it. When you are interacting with their STS, that's not AWS, or
Yeah, it
maybe you're
looks like
outside.
the STS feature of MinIO is it's like an entirely different thing.
So they may use LDAP for identification, then you need your LDAP username password to be passed there. So I was thinking
And
maybe
what will be the provider in this case? It's that file AWS
So-
credential.
I think we
No.
can start with just AWS support, but leave space for other implementation as and when we need it. Until somebody asks for it, we don't need to implement it because I don't think there is a demand for it. But the API can have other things as well. We can add it easily.
Yeah, something like instead of STS endpoint, one field, like STS is a field and a subfield is endpoint. And then we can add sibling fields to the endpoint field in the future to support other use cases.
But you'll also need to know the provider itself. Without knowing that, you don't know which functions to call within Minio. They have separate
Yeah,
functions
so
for
endpoint and provider at
different.
least, right? Those are the minimum two. fields, I guess.
And if you are using provider anything other than AWS, you need extra information, TLS certificate or credentials or something, because you need to identify who you are with STS.
Yeah, I see username and password for LDAP, and the other one is
But it's weird because like you're just using a static credential in the end, right? Like you can authenticate with MinIO using what we already have for secret graph with um access key and secret key, right? But then you also have to have a secret which seems to be like equally powerful just to acquire a temporary token as well. Like I don't really understand what are the benefits of that feature, honestly.
Then explained this last week, right? It's like you said, providing one more layer that makes it easy to maybe disconnect something when something's go wrong. You can revoke that user completely. You don't have to go after a specific token. Just stop the user, they cannot get the new token. The tokens they get, which are usable, are short-lived.
yeah, it's like a two-factor in a way. You provide two types of authentication to get the final ephemeral token, and you connect with an ephemeral token, right? So you provide the username and password to LDAP to Flux, but then what goes on the network to S3 is the ephemeral token. So if someone steals that, still way better than the static authentication.
Oh, so
Because
the
that
user and
will
password
expire.
are used only locally in the code to generate a temporary token?
No. You identify with the server. Then they'll return you a short-lived token that you use to do your processing. Bucket
Oh,
list or
so
whatever you
with
do.
the STS endpoint, you send the static credentials, get a
Right.
temporary token back, and then
Then
with
connect to the
the
bucket.
other endpoint, which is like the actual MinIO, for example. So, okay, but you still are sending the static credentials through the network. It's just that it's a different end,
Yep.
right?
Yeah.
Okay.
So let's say LDAP is in your trust zone in the same private network as the cluster. You connect to that, then MinIO is outside the trust zone. And when you connect to that through internet or whatever, you use an ephemeral token. So if someone takes that token from you, right, it will work only on that short time frame.
Well, I see. Okay, now that
No
makes a
one,
lot of sense.
hopefully no one puts LDAP on the internet.
I see.
But yeah.
Okay, now I understand the benefit.
Another use case for this could be like a company enforces that you have to use short-lived token. So someone who is introducing Flux, they have no way, they have to use this mechanism. They cannot use static credentials. So what do we do for bucket STS?
So I see no issue in supporting both AWS and LDAP. Seems straightforward.
When you say
You have
LDAP, are you saying we should implement Minio's LDAP STS provider?
yeah, with a secret ref to username password fields.
It's because it's just one of the, I think, like 3 options of STS for MinIO, right? LDAP. There are like 2 more. I
Yeah,
guess.
but I mean, the other one makes sense from a CLI perspective to read the AWS CLI config file. But for a controller, in a controller use case, you should use IAM roles. not have the config file in the secret.
True, true.
That kind of, I understand the point of having the AWS file pointing to the AWS CLI credentials locally, because you use STS locally, you do AWS login, SSO login, right? And you then generate in your local config of the AWS CLI, you have there in the config a token for 6 hours, I think it is, or 6 or 12 hours, right? And then the Minio CLI, you point the Minio CLI to that config file and you read the token from there. But in our case, the controller should do the OEDC thing, right? There is no CLI in there, right? So I don't see right now a reason to implement the config file. Let's see, like Science, let's see if someone asks for it, but I don't see a use case from a controller perspective for the
I was
config file.
even, I think my last comment was to not even consider the config file one, because if you have a config file, you have static credentials. Why don't put it in a secret and use it in a normal way? Have a cron job to update it if you need to.
Yeah,
let's
and the
see.
env stuff, where you read the access key from the environment, that makes zero sense for us. You should put that in the secret. It's access key and secret key. That's also something very CLI for the CLI use case, right? Where you have environment variables. But in our case, you should set it in the secret. It's access key and secret key, right? So from those 3 options, the only one that really makes sense is implementing LDAP.
There are some more that are not clearly documented in the Minio documentation. If you go to their code repository, I have a link there. The first link, the second link in my first comment, it's under package credentials. There are some other implementations as well. There's a STS TLS where you don't provide credentials, you provide TLS certificate. And with that, the server identifies you. That's different from LDAP. And then there is web address, which I don't know properly, but seems like it's another thing. But maybe just starting with LDAP should be fine.
So how would the provider names look like for this STS viewed? Like, so for AWS, it would be just AWS, right? Like we use OIDC. That's all.
Yeah.
And then for MinIO, it would be something like MinIO LDAP or just LDAP or what?
I would say just LDAP, right? Because then the provider for the whole bucket will be generic, and the provider for the STS will be LDAP. Now, I don't think we should say MinIO LDAP because, for example, if I'm correct, the IBM Cloud S3 implementation is actually Minio. And for them, LDAP will work even if they don't run Minio. Their API looks like that, but it's not, and it has that type of authentication, right? So I will not write Minio LDAP, I'll just say LDAP. So it's AWS or LDAP, and this field is required, and it doesn't have a default. STS is optional, right? It will be a pointer and optional in the CRD. But if you specify STS, then both fields will be required. The endpoint is required. You can't specify STS without an endpoint, and the provider should be required. The secret ref is the only one that's optional.
Right. And so we will start with AWS provider, LDAP provider, and possibly, for example, in the future, TLS provider, like the one Sonny just said, the STS,
Yeah,
TLS.
let's see if anyone asks for that.
Mhm.
But I
But
think
that would be
starting
just
with
TLS, right?
yeah. But I think for the next release, when we make bucket GA, should be okay to have only 2 of those. And if someone asks for TLS, we don't need to change anything in the API. We have the secret ref, which will point to a TLS secret, and we just add to the provider and a new accepted field, a new accepted value. So we don't break in any way we don't change in any way the API. The API will be the same. We just add more things on top of the existing API, which is fine.
Cool. So for GA, I guess the PR, well, I have to restructure the API and everything, but it's already working for AWS STS provider, has tests as well. So I guess it's only missing LDAP then, right?
I don't think
Which
we have
which will
tests.
require the secret, right? LDAP.
Yeah, but that type of validation, we can't have it in the CRD unless we write some cell policy for it. I'm guessing we could do it with cell. Yeah.
What do you mean,
So
like
cell will,
requiring a secret if the value is LDAP?
yeah.
Oh, okay. Is that like a QBuilder feature, like something we put in the what do you mean? Where would we put this spell validation?
So cell is common. It's a new feature in Kubernetes starting 1.28, where you can have cell expressions as comments, and the Kubernetes validation webhook will execute them. And there is an example for that in Helm release.
Oh, cool, great.
We have an example there. But let's split the pull request into
Oh, right. Yeah, I
2
was
pull
gonna
requests.
say that. Cool. So one for AWS, which is pretty much the one I already have, right? And another one to add the support for the LDAP provider, I guess.
Yeah.
Right.
So your current pull request will need to reshape the API, have STS, endpoint, and provider. That's it. The provider required only one thing, AWS in there. Then we review, we merge that, then you can make a second pull request for adding LDAP to it, and an issue
Cool.
for adding LDAP. But first, let's close with the proxy and have the issue for the proxy, to use the proxy everywhere, update the packages, solve the proxy, so we know that we finalize proxy support for bucket, and then we resume the STS stuff.
Cool. In terms of
Lastly,
priority, like the proxy thing should be more. I mean, both are targeted for GA, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
we were discussing last week, should the provider be required in case of AWS? Because you would have another provider at the root level. We can see that and assume that you are using AWS. There's no scenario where your root level provider would be AWS and STS provider would be something else. Should we have validation for that?
We can have it in code. I'm not sure if, oh no, we sell, you could actually do it. You can do something like, if provider is specified, and if has this value, and if STS is not nil, then the STS provider has to equal the spec provider.
In
But-
case of AWS.
Yeah, but let's write this also in Go code and actually do the validation. I'm for having validation in code first, and if we can do it with cell, we'll do it with cell as well, but we should have it in code, right? So in code, you'll have a check, something like, right, if the spec provider is AWS and the STS provider is not AWS, set the status to false, don't try to do anything and say this is not supported. You can have.
But we would still make the STS provider a required field in that case? Like, could we?
Yes, I would make it.
Okay,
No,
so
because then it becomes too complicated for validation. No, let's make it required. Like STS is an edge point anyway. It's not. If you really use STS, you should write down the provider as well. I see no issue with it. Having it explicit there, I think is better.
Cool. Yep.
So today, what we have in Bucket, and if people are using STS, that configuration will not work if STS field is required. True?
No,
What?
it's not the STS field is required. The provider under STS is required if the
Okay.
pointers. Yeah.
Okay. If you
So
don't
if the-
provide STS field, it will
STS is
continue work as
optional.
today.
If you provide STS, you need to provide input, endpoint required, provider required. If the spec provider is AWS, then the STS provider must be AWS. If
AWS.
not, we are out.
Okay.
Cool. Now I have a question. The same way we can use STS for talking to S3, we can also may want like to use like a custom STS endpoint for talking to ECR in the case of OCI repositories, don't we?
Hmm.
Just
Yeah,
to add
any-
more fire.
You can.
Right?
But I think in that case, you use OIDC. So when you use OIDC, it indirectly uses STS to get that token it uses. It's
Right,
just
but
the
the same
exception of
thing.
Minio client.
Right, but like the thing in the bucket API, I may or may not want, like when I'm using S3, I may or may not want to
Right.
use the STS feature, right? And for OCI repository or whatever else we like, image repository, etc. I still may or may, like if I'm using ECR, I still may or may not want to use STS in AWS.
You may want to use a regional STS endpoint for OCI repository. So you can, yeah.
Huh.
Yeah, we need to see if the package that we use, the client package, the Go,
Container registry.
yeah, the one made by Google that we use, if that has STS support. If it does, yeah, we should have it, but
I
not in
think-
this.
I think they don't do anything with that. It's our OCI authentication package that handles in this part.
What?
No, we need to look into it, but I will not look at that or think of this in any way for the next release.
Right, of course.
And the
By the
focus
way,
is next
like-
release, right? It's next month. So
Right, and OCI repository, by the way, is still not GA, right? And it's in a further
Yes.
release down the road.
yeah. Yeah, but we do have something merged for it, right? In source controller. You added proxy, right? Support it.
for
Oh.
OCI. Yeah, it's still open, the PR. Like, yeah, so actually, yeah, I mean, it's not in the next release, right? But anyway, like, Sunny went, like, Sunny and I went through the code we were talking about earlier, right? Like the record stuff, like
Yeah.
the keyless, everything. Like, there's like many places where different clients are created and they don't like take in transport or anything. And so it's basically very hard for us to use support proxy for this code path. But it looks like, at least right now, we can do that easily for notation. So this last thing open in that PR.
And key-based cosine.
But key-based cosine is like you said, I think you said that it's already like using the transport we pass to.
No. Oh, it already works. It just works with what we have.
But we need tests,
Yeah.
right? That's what
We
you
need
mean.
tests to verify that it actually works. Yeah.
Yeah. So tests for cosine with key with not keyless, right? Not keyless.
Yeah, with
Just-
a private key, yeah, secret ref.
Yeah. So cosine with private key, we need tests for that. And for notation, we need a tweak in the code and tests. Like, we need to pass, right?
Just
We need to pass the transport.
create a different client. It's
Right.
a whole client, not just.
Oh, right. So a client with the transport with the prox.
Mhm.
So you have
Yep.
access to the, you have access to the client finally for notation.
Oh, cool. Okay, so we can set the transport.
Yeah, the client.
And that was a question, because last time you said that the client, well, you showed me that the client is an OS client, OST2, and you didn't have access to the transport for that client because it was using the default transport. Do you remember?
Mhm. So the notation package, in our notation package, we just import the Aura's retry HTTP client and use it.
Yes.
We just replace that with another client that we write, which will be similar to the Aura's retry HTTP client, but it will have our own transport.
But you lose all the retry logic then.
No, I'd say our version of the same client, a retry client, but it will accept a transport. And I would assume we'll upstream this.
Okay.
We'll
Well,
propose-
the upstream comes with the HTTP Pro. But, yeah, okay, good. I got it. Yeah, should work.
So the proxy support for OCI is in the roadmap for the next release, right? So this is also.
Oh, so proxy support for OCI is in the next release as well, together with
Yep.
Bucket?
Yeah.
Okay.
Caching is as well.
Yes. For the proxy, if I remember correctly, Stefan said that if you want people to move from Git and Hell
Yeah.
to OCI repositories, you need proxy support. Caching is
Yeah,
on the roadmap. It won't be ready.
A lot of people are using proxies to get to Helm charts, and we for them to use Helm release version 2 with OCI repository, we really need HTTPS proxy in OCI repo.
Cool. Yeah. So I have so oh yeah, and STS is now on the road on the next release as well, right? So
Yes.
okay.
So we
I
have you have three things basically.
Yep.
STS, the proxy fix for Bucket, and proxy implementation for OCI repo.
Cool.
1 month away.
Cool.
Okay, next is cache registry credential for cloud providers for OCI repo. So can we move this forward, or we should move this to winter, the winter release?
Next release is winter.
No, next release is in 1 month. I'm asking if is this doable?
Yeah, we worked on. We talked about it last week, and I said yes, I'm working on it for next for a month from now. I think it will be fine. The thing is, so if you remember correctly, I said you have to refactor the client, the OCI client entirely, and include caching inside. So it means that we will need extensive testing to make sure there's no regression. But yeah, I'm working on it. On 1 month, yeah, I think it should be fine. In the implementation, it should be fine. Then we will have the testing phase.
But something related to this we discussed last week. So now, in case of OCI client or OCI authentication, we will be moving the cache from the login manager to the client. So client will be performing caching right into the cache. So client will just ask the login manager for a token. Login manager is not aware of cache. It will fetch a token and return it to the client. Client will decide if the token works. If it works, they'll cache it. And next time another request comes, it will, if it has the token in the client, we'll just use it instead of asking the login manager. So last month or a few months ago, we introduced cache in the login manager's options. It's a public field, which we need to deprecate if we go this route, because cache will not be in login manager anymore with the new plan.
It's not in login manager anymore for us in the client. In the OCI client, it won't be used in the login manager because we need the client to handle all the revocation things. And I think DeepT has to do the same for the Git client for providers. But well, we can still keep it because now we have published a new version of the OCI package. So what I think is in the OCI auth package, you can still keep it as it's just an option. If you don't provide the cache, anyway, it doesn't change anything in the logic, right? And once we move to the once we move to the new auth package, we can get rid of this in the manager.
Okay. I was just worried that this cache in the auth package will not know if the token works or not. It will just keep returning the same token always. So it's dangerous to use. If you remove it, okay, we'll remove it later.
Yeah, eventually we remove it.
Yeah, we can do a minor release with deprecation notice, and then the next one we delete it. Also, so for the caching side, how are we going to now? If we move the logic in the client, can we also do the invalidation? Like, let's say you get a token from the cache, you make the call, it fails with unauthorized. Who is responsible for calling the cache and delete the
client,
the entry in the client? And then the client should. So in my mind is, you ask the cache, do I have a token cached? The cache will say yes. You get a token. You call the auth package. The auth package returns. No, you don't call the auth package.
Why do
you
use it?
You pull.
You pull, or you do get digest, or
whatever you
source
want.
controller, for example, is get digest to verify, do I have the latest version or not, right? Let's say get digest fails. If it fails and we look at the response, and the
It's
response
unauthorized.
is unauthorized, we need to call the cache,
Revoke
delete
itself.
that key. Then we need to read the
Authenticate.
secret, authenticate, read the
Yeah.
secret, read the
Get a new token.
workload identity provided secret, right? In
Yes.
whatever it is, a file or whatever. We authenticate. If the authentication succeeds, then we have to put it in the cache.
No,
Right,
first
and then
first the authentication succeed. Last time you said that first we need to talk with the registry to make sure it works, and then we put in the cache. We validate that the token scope is fine, and then we put it in the cache. Because even though we have a token, we don't know about the scope because maybe the user hasn't done the IAM stuff.
yeah, of
correctly.
course, but anyway, we rely on correct responses.
Yeah. And then we cache
So
it. So that's the first use case for the revocation. The second one is expiration. Normally we don't have to do anything if it's expired because it would be deleted from the cache.
if it's expired, then the call that says, do you have a token, will say no, so you go and do the login and all of that. Okay. Yeah. Cool.
Feels like something that should be in an RFC. There's so many
Really?
things. No, I don't think it's
Well-
like needed. That'll just increase the time. No need.
Well,
It's okay.
the client things maybe. Well, the cache itself, we said that it shouldn't be. But the client, at the beginning we didn't.
The way it uses.
At the beginning we didn't think about it this way. But now, it's slightly changed the behavior. That's true. Another thing, well, we can discuss. Well, JRC, I don't know. Well, anyway, a second thing is that I have looked at Deep3 pull requests yesterday, and she put all the caching logic in the Git package, but I think the way it's in the auth Git package, but I think, well, the logic when it comes to revocation, if you use a provider, has to be the same for Azure DevOps and Azure Registry. What we just said, like we get a token, then we do the actions, like the action is for NoSQL Registry, get a tag, get a digest. The action for Git is get a commit, right? But if it doesn't work, we do the revocation. And what I mean is the revocation code, like delete from a cache, pull a new token. This is the same thing that's going to happen for a Git client and an OCI client.
Yeah, should be the same logic.
Yes.
But response codes are different, the whole thing, right?
Well, we can have different handlers, but we can, I don't know, or maybe we can look at it later. But
yeah, let's do two separate implementations, and if they actually look the same, we can refactor it in winter. Yeah. I also don't want to, block the next release. If let's say we get it in September, 1st of September, we have OCI caching ready. We don't have Git ready. I'm for moving the Git implementation to the winter release and do the next Flux release with only OCI, right? But then if we want to say, oh, all this logic should be in common, then we block both futures on the same thing. And if you say you can get OCI caching in end of August, I think we should not block on Git and release that and move Git further on if it's not ready.
Okay. Also for
Okay.
Git, also for Git, what we talk about, and I think that's what DT is doing, is first implementation will be for Azure DevOps, but we have no commitment for implementing what was the other ones, GCP
GitHub.
and GitHub.
No, in the roadmap it's Azure and GitHub for the next
And
release.
GitHub, okay.
Yeah. Yeah, we'll have to move it in winter, GitHub. Okay, we are
More
out
about
of
the out of
we are
time.
out of time. Yeah, we can discuss at the next meeting more on the roadmap. There are other things. AWS integration is in here. And yeah, other stuff in here. Enhanced OCI artifact support, where we would use the OCI client that we use in the CLI also in source controller. So we should really discuss all of this before we reshape the roadmap. Let's discuss it next week. It's a lot to dig into. Do we have anything around AWS that we are ready to merge, Sunny?
We can start merging things. It's just whenever you are ready to run some Terraform apply, we can merge everything.
Okay. I'll set a reminder for Monday, and are you available next Monday?
Sure.
Okay, let's have a one-on-one on Monday then. I'll run the Terraform and then we should start merging those. I mean, I looked at these like 1 month ago and everything looked okay. So there is no reason not to run them and wait till release time. Let's run them now and see if there are any issues, what costs there are, and so on. Okay. Cool. Okay, we are on time. I think we made good progress with the roadmap discussion. I will create a draft pull request this week with what we discussed now, but it's not going to be merged with roadmap updates. After next week meeting, hopefully you'll finalize how the roadmap should look and then merge it. Okay.
Okay.
Cool. Great.
See you. Bye, everyone.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye bye.
See you guys.
Thank you very
Bye.
much. Bye.
Bye.